Welcome to NLP Talks with Laura Evans, a podcast for people looking to unleash their potential in business and life. I'm Laura Evans, international trainer of NLP and host for this podcast series. Join me for insightful interviews with people that know firsthand just how NLP can change lives, and they'll share with you tips and strategies to help you clear your path to success. Stay tuned. Hi and welcome to the podcast. My name is Laura Evans and I'm the founder and lead trainer of Unleash Your Potential and of course your host for this podcast series. I'm delighted to tell you that today's guest is Mark Perkins, who is a training facilitator, coach and commentator. And in this session, we're going to be talking about using NLP in that context. So if you want to understand how to use NLP in training, facilitating or commentating, stay tuned to hear all of Mark's tips and strategies to helping you be the best possible presenter. So Mark, what brought you to NLP? Like, where did it start for you?
So about 10 years ago, I was working for an organisation and my manager decided he was going to go off and do some NLP work. And I was a trainer for this company. And every weekend he'd go off and do this session. And he'd come back on a Monday and he'd tell me all about it, or he'd practice his techniques with me. So I was almost his guinea pig. And I started looking about it. And because I wanted to develop myself as a trainer and a facilitator, it was one of the things I looked at that alongside CIPD and a few other things. And then as it happened, a few years later, I took redundancy and set up myself as self-employed. And I decided to go down the route of how am I going to develop myself? What are some of the key things I looked at? I looked back and spoke to Neil and we chatted about NLP.
So what was it about NLP that you kind of went, yeah, this is the toolkit I need to help me become an even better facilitator, an even better trainer?
I think I took the learning from what Neil did and how he helped me develop. And I've always had a vested interest in helping people, which is why I got into learning development all those years ago. But as I've gone on and I've worked with different levels of people and all the way up, like I say, all the way up to CEOs, I thought I need a little bit more tools to my toolkit and my armory to kind of be able to go and react to do different things, but also to get more out of other people.
So let me ask you about your practitioner course. Was there a key highlight for you, a key technique or a key moment in that course where there was just like this big light bulb moment for you in terms of NLP?
There was millions of them through the course of it. Goes to the timeline therapy at the very end of the session. That was mind-blowing for me and such a journey. But probably the simplest, most influential part, I think that I've used the most as well, was changing the phraseology from subconscious to unconscious, because subconscious made it inferior. And actually seeing the power of that, and a lot of clients I work with, we talk a lot about how effective we are with our thinking. We use recall memories and we think about imagined future. And a lot of that is the unconscious brain working. And for me, when we did this, and I've gone away with clients now, I've gotten to take away from their conscious mind of them, their practical thinking, to really allow themselves to think differently, be it either getting some clarity or even generating some ideas, but allowing their unconscious mind to just give them that freedom to do so and not be restricted by kind of the ways we always do it, etc. And you could see it in people's reactions, and we talk about the sensory acuity, but you just know when they've just gone and had that light bulb moment and their eyes just light up and you know something's happened under the level of under the surface, and they've just gone, wow, yeah. And
it's like brilliant, isn't it? That moment?
One simple question, one simple word, or rephrasing of something makes them think in a slightly different way. It's just such a big power.
I just want to change tack slightly and talk about how you've used your toolkit that you've acquired to date in that training environment. So you spend a lot of your time in front of an audience, whether that is you in front of, let's do training first. We'll do the commentating after. But when you're in a training environment, you might be in front of 20 delegates or whatever. What stuff out of the NLP toolkit has made a massive difference to you in the training room?
So my training depends on the client I'm working with, but my layout, I've changed the way that I do my layout. And I'm thinking layout of the room. I'm thinking more from their perspective as well. So I want to talk about our eye patterns, and I'm thinking about their visual recall. So I make sure all my things that I want to take away on the flip charts, if I've used them, are always to my left hand or their left hand side.
So as the delegates start facing the front of the room, it's to the front left of the room. Yeah.
While we use other parts of the room, but I always go back to there. That's my recall parts. So we recap what we've done, how we've done things. So my key flips are there as well. Or if I've got a screen, I'll put that in that place. And I do the same thing from an auditory point of view. When I'm talking, I go and sit on that side of the room as well. So if they are in a horseshoe, sometimes they are, the way the business sets out, I'll sit over that side as well. So they've kind of got that auditory recall memory as well. And then I start to use those elements into it. And it was more about putting it in one at a time in a different session to do, that I started to notice the impact that they were having. And even just the way that I started to speak to them. and then the way I'd set up and then debrief the activities is very, very different now than it was before. And I've really challenged their thinking as well.
So, and how did you find out that was making a big difference? Is that because they were enjoying it more? Were they getting better results? What was that for you?
I noticed the recaps, there was a better learning to start with straight away. But as I drew the attention to it as well, it was just me watching. So I was picking on my sensory acuity. That was one of my big things, noticing reactions and where people are going. And so my mannerisms, and I'll be driving across this way, my hands, and I'll be drawing them across that way. And I'll be watching them going, oh, it's there. And just seeing their head moves, their eyes, and how they took information in, I could just see the difference when they started to deliver on the final day of our sessions. They would create their little challenges. There was a memory increase in the memory about how they were doing what they were doing.
They were retaining the information much more effectively. Yeah, I think it's interesting as a trainer. I know when I first started, because I was like you, trainer before I came to NLP and continue to train after. And I think as a trainer, having higher levels of sensory acuity, which for those listening, I know Mark's mentioned it a few times and I've mentioned it, sensory acuity is simply noticing the minute changes in someone's physiology. So noticing the reaction, noticing the colour shift changes, the breathing shift changes and how your group are reacting. Yeah, I think it just enables you to become a better trainer, much more precise trainer and much more accurate in your delivery, I think.
And I've also noticed that when I've done bigger groups, so some of the sessions I've run, I've done up to 200 even just as facilitated on the stage. And we've made sure that things are in a certain place. And I've noticed as a big group, the engagement there is very different as well. So while I've got 12 people in a room, typically, I can see them really closely. When I've got a big group, I see there's a group engagement is very slightly different as well. And as I go down there, they're kind of looking around what it is. And I actually noticed one group that I had a big screen up, and when the screen wasn't on, they were looking for the information. It's all there, and they were just going back, keep it up the screen up there. They were kind of pointing where they wanted it as well, which is really good to see.
Yeah. And has the NLP stuff that you acquired had any impact in terms of the way you've structured material, that the way you deliver the material?
Yeah, I've changed the way that I do our pre-course work. So I've taken over doing some pre-course work to start building relationships and rapport with people, where before the organisation would do it, I would see them once they've turned up. I've now taken on board to kind of do some email communication with them and think about the language I use to different types of people. I don't know their roles, so I've got an idea about them in the organisations, but I'm challenging myself to the way I speak in an email. And also then I speak to every person on the phone and start to kind of get an idea about them themselves, what kind of person they are, the way they speak. So as soon as I see them again, I've got a better feeling for them, a better understanding. They know who I am. So it's not just about the trust part, but it's also about me understanding them as a person, how I can then use that going forward. So I'll ask them some questions around what their reasons why are, okay, what's their drivers and motivations and things, so I can start to get a feel when that session comes in. So when I start my 4-day program, for example, like if I've delivered with them, then I've already got a head start to where I'm at, which gives me a better platform to go into.
You can pick up so much in those calls, can't you? Like you can start listening for their rep systems, their preferred, are they visual, are they auditory? And then you can start to change. I remember doing it once and changing one of the exercises and thinking, hang on, I've got a bunch of visual people here. They're all talking to me in visual language. I need to re-engineer some of these exercises because they need to be doing stuff that's visual. And also, I don't know if you, but I used to find you'd pick up on all their limiting beliefs. Like you, as a trainer or as a coach, having those pre-calls, you hear different stuff.
Oh, God, yeah.
Like you hear their limiting beliefs rolling off their tongue. They don't know what they are. They're just chatting to you as far as they're concerned. You think, okay, I've got a bunch of people here that actually believe X is not possible. Like they're coming to a course to do X, but they think it's not possible. There's no point in me training them on how to do it until I've got their mindset in the right place. Have you found that as well?
Yeah, I mean, one of the activities I do as an icebreaker or an energizer to start with is we call it a thinking exercise for one of the clients I work for. And it's actually where we time in ropes. On a podcast, that sounds a random thing, but it's we get them. They're in pairs. We get them to get themselves in pairs. This rope's got 2 loops on. They have to entwine themselves in the hands of the loops, and they get engaged that way. And the aim is to free themselves from the partners. But because you talk about self-limiting beliefs, they're already going, well, what kind of course is this with tying ropes of somebody? Plus also they're kind of putting the beliefs on, I can't do it, I'm locked in, I don't know this person, it's a bit, I shouldn't be doing this, I shouldn't be doing that. But all it takes is the simplicity of asking the right question to think about the solution to get out of it. And that's the challenge. But what you start to notice is how many things are going through their head, but how many things from the past they're going through their heads about as well. That they've done like Christmas puzzles. Do you know the little metal ones that you get in crackers and things? Yeah. It's the same kind of thing to that. There's a little technique, there's a cheeky way of doing it, but people don't think that way. They just go head first and do it. And actually, we use that to recall all those things that have helped them or hindered them in the past that's gone for it. And that, you just see how many things they've said, I can't do this, I'm not very good at that, I don't do puzzles very well. And you just hear about what they're saying, how they're saying, or even just their reactions looking, they don't know what to do.
Yeah. And I'm so with you. Like, it just took my training to a whole new level when I started to listen for different things, see different things, and then tailor things. And I think, I certainly felt was more comfortable tailoring during the course. We all go, when we're trainers, we go in with a training plan, we have a plan of what we're going to deliver. But actually, I felt more confident tailoring as I went along and think, that exercise didn't work. Right, okay, this afternoon I need to change that because I've got different people in the room.
It's having that flexibility to know that you've noticed something about it, and the good thing is they don't know what we're talking, our program, our process, what we're missing something. So if I do things in a different order, it makes a difference as long as I cover what it is. Yeah. But I've changed the way that I deliver it in the way my setup is. But also I've just started doing different activities in different ways to engage with those people differently into different rooms, and especially my coaching as well. My coaching has changed from being quite a fixed in a sit-down environment and things to understanding that person and find out what's the best environment for them. And sometimes I just take them for a walk. We go somewhere totally different, so they've not got that desk, that phone, that recall memory of everything around them to see. They've got a whole new way of looking. So I love now, on my little coaching sessions, going for a walk for an hour and just to see the difference in the way that they think as well, and the way they talk, because they don't have their everyday work around them. It's brilliant.
Yeah, no, totally. So, you spend a huge amount of your time on your feet in front of audiences, as I've said. So you spend a huge amount of time training and facilitating groups, obviously a huge amount of time doing one-to-one coaching, which we've touched on. The other bit I'm curious to ask you about is your sports commentating, and when you're potentially in front of thousands of people in a stadium and you're the voice that we all hear, and it's like, I know who that voice is now. But, that's, again, presenting, but in a different way when you're doing sports commentating. How has NLP made a difference to you in that area?
So I had to go back to 2008 to start with, just to help you with that one. So as I mentioned, Neil was doing his NLP course at the weekends and he was practicing things. And we just announced that beach volleyball was going to be at Horse Guards Parade in the London 2012 Olympics, and the rest of the things were happening. And that was one of my goals back then, I'd just started doing some commentary on the beach. I played volleyball since the age of 10. So I'd been really involved with it, and somebody asked me to come along and help out. And I was like, do you know what? On a beach tour, I went to Skegness. It was a good weekend. Wasn't very good at what I did, but Karen loved it and she said, "Oh, do you want to come back in?" I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So I went to Yarmouth. But I then applied and I said, right, I want to be the voice, the presenter, the host of the beach volleyball at the Olympic Games. Now, I knew there was professional people. I've seen it, I've watched it, and I know how amazing that is. I was like, I want to be that voice. I want to do that. And actually, with Neil using some of his techniques, not knowing there was the NLP side of things, but he helped me achieve those goals. So he helped me get that clarity. There's so many things he did in the sessions. We'd need a whole other podcast to tell you all the different things he did. Yeah. But actually what that meant is it gave me the confidence, because I'd only stood in front of 15 people. In fact, I had one event, there was one man and a dog. It was that bad weather that he was just sat there with his dog. I introduced him to the players because there was more players than him. But I couldn't visualize standing in front of 15,000 people at Horse Guards Parade if I hadn't done the little steps going forward as well. And that's helped me then go on to do other things. And now when I present, I think about the way that I speak, the language I'm using, and you'll get it in this podcast as well. I get very excited and I talk very fast. And I'm really challenging the way I speak now when I talk to bigger groups, so they're getting the clarity, so they get engagement as the whole group around. And a lot of the stuff I do is with a mic in front of the crowd. So it's not just hidden. I'm not just the voice of God. I'm there. So I've got to kind of be engaging in the way that I hold myself, my body language, my posture, but also the way that I engage with the eye contact of a whole group, from kids that are 2 to 3 year olds to grandmas watching the gymnastics event or whatever it is. So I kind of work every event differently, but reacted to who I've got in the room.
Yeah. Wow. Commentating at the Olympics. Amazing. That is amazing. Yes. Absolutely amazing.
If Carlsberg did jobs, that was the one.
I was going to say, right? Too right. So you, like I say, you are in front of literally thousands of people when you do that. Yeah. And I totally can understand how NLP, although you weren't trained in it yourself at that point, got you to a place where you could do that. And obviously, having done NLP training ourselves, and hopefully the listeners either have or will in the future do NLP training, can understand how NLP NLP could prepare you to do that.
Oh, absolutely.
Could you have imagined, I was going to say, could you have imagined doing it having not had that NLP development?
No, had Neil not done what he did with me and done the little sessions, and I said some of the sessions, I could have walked out there and I couldn't told you what he'd done.
Yeah.
Because at the time I was so submersed in delivering what I was doing for the organisation, then doing their induction training, which was a really intense course. And then every Monday, having Neil talk to me, doing all these different goals and different ways of doing things and looking at different perspectives. I had no idea at the time.
Did it all feel a bit weird and a bit out there at times as well?
Totally. I was totally.
People often say that.
And then you go back into work, and I was like, I have no idea. And I knew, I even tried some Mondays to schedule something in. So Neil didn't call me. He didn't arrange a meeting with me. He didn't come down to London and meet me, Mark. I did everything I could sometimes to avoid that because I knew what I was going to do. But it got me where I was, and I've gone on then since, and I've done some training courses for people who do audio description commentaries. That's one of my other things I do at football stadiums and things. So I've helped train those people as well and get them really to think about the language they're using, the way they're working, all the way to, like I say, big events in London, Rio, Commonwealth Games, etc. as well. So I wouldn't have never have got where I've got to and had the level of confidence without doing or going through that as an experience beforehand as well.
So if there was someone listening to this that maybe has a public speaking opportunity, and maybe they need to do a father of the bride speech in front of a few people, or you know, all the way through to thousands of people like you do, but they find themselves in front of an audience, is there something that you could give them, a tip or technique you could give them that you think would really help?
Oh, there's loads of ways around that. A lot of it, sometimes for me, it's the prep bit before.
Yeah.
So understanding who it is you're talking to, what's your what, what's their why they're there, what you're going to get from it. Yeah. But also when they're there, the first thing for me, and I do this now all the time when I'm about to do a large event, is just to breathe. Just take a second, and just because you're going live or the mic's in front of you and people are looking at you, and it doesn't feel long, it might feel long inside of you, but just taking that one little second to have a quick breathe and just nice and slowly just deliver what you need to deliver. And that's, for me, is the simplest thing I can say, because I am a very emotional person. I'm very vocal with what I say and I do. But for me, that's been such a big thing. As soon as I know that I've gone live, I'm there, I take that breath first. Yeah. I then compose myself. And I learned a lot, actually, on the NLP course, just about my position. And I used to walk a lot. And that's one of the big things with public speaking. I know it's totally different now. I've seen that differently. I would now stand in a more structured position. And I have a mic, and I've taken away my clipboard, so I know what I need to say. But I'm also stopping, wave my arms around like this and distracting and stuff as well, because people don't need to see that. But by doing that, I'm just allowing what I'm saying. And I still deliver it in the right tone and the right message, but I've just composed myself a little bit more.
Yeah, and anybody listening to this that's done any of our practitioner courses will know what Wednesday afternoon's like when we do presentations, and I teach everybody at story time and teach people how to stand. Like, it always surprises me just how impactful that is. Like, I know it works, you know, and walking around your stage is just so distracting for your audience. But for you personally as a presenter, when you stand with both feet underneath your hips, even weight into them, nice and tall with your shoulders rolled back. I mean, we call it trainer stance. Yeah. You know, nice and tall and your chin up and looking at your audience. How to stand makes such a difference to how you feel when you present.
Yeah. I mean, there's that big fear, isn't it? Public speaking is one of the biggest fears that people have got, because people have said things about the past. And that goes back to kind of our unconscious mind telling us that other people have struggled with it. So that's why we've struggled with it. But actually, it is just as simple as that. Put yourself in the right situation, know what you need to say. When you deliver it, it's there for you.
Yeah. And what we'll do in the show notes is I've got a template that we can put for how to stand to do a great presentation to be the most confident. Yeah. So as you're listening to this, after the podcast, if you go to unleashyourpotential.org.uk/podcast, then listeners will be able to go and click a link to download that, and I'll pop that on the website for people.
That'd be really helpful. Yeah, that'd be really good.
Yeah, so we'll do that. One of the things that I talk a lot about when it comes to presenting and being in front of large audiences is nerves. Lots of people, and as you've just alluded to, lots of people get nervous, and breathing is such an important. It keeps us alive, but secondly, just calming the system down with some controlled breathing. Do you have a particular breathing technique that you find really helpful, or is it literally just a deep, slow breath in and out?
Mine is the deep, slow to start with, and then out. And I'm now conscious that in between, if I'm doing segments or I'm doing a welcome to an event, and I know I've got 3 or 4 things to do, I know that in between those 3 or 4 things, I've taken a conscious breath. And it's not at a level with me that, I'm talking about the unconscious competence, I'm not there yet. but I'm really consciously saying to myself, right, and breathe. And breathe. So in between each one, so otherwise those 4 things don't start to merge together as well. So I'm really conscious about the first one I take now is a big one. And then after that, it's just making sure in between each one, it's my little paragraph breaker as well. It's kind of just where I'm at.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right when you said earlier, sometimes when we pause, it feels like an absolute eternity to us. And you go, everybody must know I've just paused. And it's like, but they really don't know, do they? You know, and it's just that, just take a breath. Even if they're in the middle of commentating, you know, or as you do, or someone's doing a speech, just stop for a moment and take a breath. Sometimes it's a really useful way of making a really important point. You know, if you just stop and allow that a moment for the audience just for that message to sink in, sometimes that works really well.
I've started doing that as well when I facilitate. And if I'm coming towards the end of a session and I just want them to do some thinking, I'll just go, what thoughts, questions, comments are going through your head at the moment? And I don't necessarily need a response, but I just use the classic, the sound of silence. And I know I've asked them a good enough question that's going to just let them to think, but it also gives me that moment just to kind of watch what's happening, see where they're at, and I can, again, go back into my facilitation mode. I can notice where they're at, what they've done as well. So that really helps me take a bit of a breath, an understanding level, and just kind of gauge where they're at by how they respond, or if they don't respond, I know that they're thinking as well.
I think it does. I think you're right. When you're a trainer, sometimes it's some of the best well-placed questions that just work and actually engage in the audience things. I remember one of the things I was taught when I first came into using NLP and presenting, when you ask a group a question, to actually use the representational systems in the questions. You know, say to them, so, you know, you might be doing a facilitation or something. You say to people, so what would you see, hear, feel, or what would you be doing going on in that environment? And using the visual, auditory, kinesthetic, you know, in your question, so that you can appeal to the whole of your audience. Because, of course, one of the biggest problems we have as presenters is we talk in our preference. So, as a kinesthetic person, I'd say, so how do you feel about that, Mark? And if you're a visual person, you'll go, well, I don't really feel anything, but it looks good. You know, so have you found that?
Yeah, especially as different organisations I've worked with. So I've worked with organisations, the public sector, private sector, and their roles that they have in operations, etc. Then I have to kind of challenge again, what are they going to notice when they go back into the workplace? If they're not like a kinesthetic exactly the same as me, then I'm having to kind of challenge that. So I've got stronger at, even if I don't ask it in one go and do all 4. I go, what did you notice in your workplace? How would that make you feel? What might other people be saying as well? And what would you see differently as well? So I kind of do, not necessarily all of them in one go. I sometimes break those questions down to see their responses.
Yeah, definitely. Did you notice that after your course, that personally things had changed?
Yeah, I kind of went away, not with the days, but after our timeline, that was kind of at the end of the session. It was kind of, that took me into a whole other place, and some real realizations. I went away and spoke to my wife, and one evening I actually spoke to Archie. He had no idea what was going on, bless him.
I love him. How old is Archie now?
He's 15 months now. So it was 12 months, coming up to a year, and we were away camping, and we sat one evening, and I think everyone had gone to do something else, and we would just sit there chatting, and I was just telling him about what we're going to do and how we're going to do things as a family, what I'm going to do as a dad. And that for me is one of the big things, is I've changed the way I look at things, my outlook, because of Archie now, and actually what I'm starting to look at doing and how I develop myself, and even my language I use with him. I'm not saying don't to him all the time and things. I'm really conscious about what he's taken on board and what his unconscious level's doing, and it's mind-blowing.
So that's a really good point about language. I know we've talked a little bit about language, but if we just pause for a moment just to look at the word don't. Because so many of us say to people what we don't want. I say to people, use positive directionalised language, say what you want. And we often do that. We say, don't do this. And of course, the unconscious mind can't process that negative. So you're actually telling them to do what you don't want them to do. You know, don't run across the road. What do they do? Run across the road, because the unconscious mind can't process it. It's so powerful, isn't it, when you start changing your language and start using it in a positive directionalised way.
Yeah, we've all got these grooves in because everybody says it. Until you're really aware about the language, it's like, don't spill the drink or carry it carefully. It's just changing that language. And I'm catching myself saying things, like I said to Archie as my classic example of don't do this. It's like, well, say something different, although he's still very young there. But now with clients, I'm very much around that, and I've done that for quite a while anyway, about talk about what you do want. When you want to develop something, what is it you do want to get from it, not what you don't want? And so I've used that quite a lot pre-NLP, but really, really challenging and getting the clarity and understanding to really drive that for themselves now as well.
And do you find in your coaching session with clients, when you actually explain that to them, that there's like a massive light bulb moment for them as well, and they start to realise what's going on?
Yeah, they see the simplicity of it. and they understand it, but it's trying to get them out of that habit of saying it and doing it. And a lot of the times I'll do a scenario where I'll get them to pick a drink up, and you're like, don't spill it, and just get them to picture what's happened. Or I'll get them to, I talk about the analogy of a train at the underground in London. You've got the yellow lines, I can stand up straight, that's great. But actually, as soon as they used to say, don't step over the yellow line, there's a conversation happening in your head about how would you do it, what would you do? And then naturally people will go, I'll take a step back just in case. You weren't going to fall anywhere, but it's that mindset. And it's the challenges I have with people is I normally get them to experience it in a way, might be like I say about a drink or a pen or do something. And we say don't.
Yeah.
If in a group activity, I typically go with pick somebody who I know I've got a good relationship with, get them to stand up, typically a bloke, and I go, don't imagine him in a green mankini. And it's kind of at the group they go, oh, what? Matt's standing there going, oh, I don't know why you said that about me. But I get them to really picture about your choice of what you're thinking. And actually, you might have put him in a pink tutu, or you might have just put him in what he is. But it's amazing that power is there. And you hear about the pink elephant and all those ones as well. Yeah. But to really draw it out, and then when I do the coaching sessions with them, or if it's a one-on-one, I really kind of channel that thinking to go, right, what do you want? Specifically, what do you want to get from that? By when? And to bring that kind of visualization, which is the part of that, to really kind of drive what they want, so they can visualize that, so then we can work the steps back to it.
Yeah, fab. So we're coming towards the end of the podcast. I mean, I could sit here all day talking to you about training, because it's a passion that you and I both have, because I train for a living and you train for a living alongside your coaching and commentating. Yeah. If people that are listening to this would like to get in contact with you, either for any of the reasons that you've talked about today, what's the best way for them to get hold of you?
Either on my LinkedIn profile, or it's Mark Perkins, on there, and also on social media, so on things like Facebook, on Twitter and Instagram, it's actually Major Perko 77.
It's what?
Major Perko 77. It's not a nickname, but it's one that's been stood. But I've got all my sports stuff's on there as well, and everything goes through as well. So.
Yeah, okay, good. Cool. So I'm going to finish off with 2 little quick fire activities. So I'm going to ask you a series of quick questions.
Okay, right.
I'm going to fire them at you, see how we get on.
Okay.
And then I've got another little secret for you after that. Mm-hmm. So yeah. Cool. So here we go then. So quick fire questions. Fine. So what does unleash your potential mean to you?
Development.
Okay. Anything else?
Oh, so we're not just answering.
Well, it could be one word, or it could be 2 or 3, but development?
It's development of yourself and development of other people.
Okay, good. If you could go back to being any age that you like, what age would you go back to?
7.
Any particular reason?
I was in Africa at the time, but it was just one of those moments when I was learning different things, and I was aware about what was going on, but also I could see lots of little challenges ahead as well. So I was stretching my boundaries, but also I knew I had security behind me.
Yeah, okay. Good. What piece of advice would you give your former self?
My former self? Do it.
Yeah.
So just go away and do it. There's lots of times we've all taken on board things we wanted to do or we thought about doing it, but actually for my former self to do it, there's other things I probably should have done in my past, but I'm now doing them now, which is later in life, and I'm now aware about that. So I'd say the same thing to my future self as well, just do it.
Just do it. Just get on with it. Yeah, I think it's a great attitude. We spend so much time that we talking ourselves out of stuff.
Yeah.
It's bonkers. So any view about what the future looks like 10 years down the line?
Yeah, lots of views.
Oh, okay, fine. We'll move on then, shall we?
I don't know. Me being a better version of me.
Yeah.
Developing not just other people, but also Archie, and developing him into being the best he can be. But then for me, from a business perspective, developing as a coach, as an NLP practitioner as well, and really kind of upping my skills and supporting other people.
Yeah, fab, brilliant. So we have the Unleash Your Potential jar of badges here. Okay,
jar of badges.
The jar of badges. So in here are all sorts of words connected with NLP. Okay. So what I'm going to invite you to do is to put your hand in, give it a whirl around, grab a hand, and I want you to pick just one badge, and then I'm going to ask you why you picked it. Okay.
Well, so I can't use the answer that you asked me to whirl it around and pick it. That's the answer. No,
that's not the answer.
Okay. You need a slightly bigger jar to get my hand in.
Oh, sorry. Shall I pull some out? You got one?
Yes.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
You happy with that one?
I don't know all the rest of them are, so I'm happy with this one. No, it's fine.
Okay.
I'll stick with what I've got.
Good. Do it. So what did you pick?
I picked life-changing.
Oh, okay.
And it sounds corny, but it has been life-changing. The whole point of me doing this, coming to a point when I'm now self-employed as a freelance trainer and commentator, I've had to make some life changes. I took that choice on and to become self-employed. But the whole point of me doing my NLP practitioner course was to change my life for the better, to be able to secure myself and my family's future, but also to be the better person of myself to see me develop and grow forward. I'm 40 years old now. I've got to think in the next 20 years what I want to do. And this has been the whole point of this is hopefully changed my life. So far it has done, and it will continue to do so.
Yeah. Well, that's your gift to take away. Your
very much.
Little gift from our episode. So again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you coming and talking to us. So thank you very much for staying with us. I hope you really enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed it. If you want to find out more about the courses that we offer, then of course go and check out our website, unleashyourpotential.org.uk/courses, and you'll find all the information about the courses that Mark has been talking about today. And of course, if you've enjoyed the session, if you know anybody that's into public speaking, training, facilitating, or public commentating, and you think these tips will be useful to share with them, feel free to share this episode with your friends. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and like so that you get to know when the next episode comes out. So thank you for joining us. Until next time, take care.